Hey, how y'all doing? This is Mongo Slade. So, today we're going to talk about Bully Ray or Bubba Ray. And he says that, NXT does not have the glaring issues that AEW has. And this has caused quite a problem because some people, how people are about AEW. They have this emotional attachment to a company that's only been around for 12 months. But, so let's talk about this. So, what did Bully Ray actually say? I'm not going to read an exact quote, but he said it on Busted Open Radio. I saw it on two different news sites. So he essentially said that NXT had a tighter work rate and that it's more polished, and that AEW has people who are missing things, and that it feels very indie-rific. And so, for a little contrast, I saw that Booker T was talking about this. So I went to see what Booker T had to say, and Booker T says that well, his overall thing was, his view of wrestling is doing the same thing everyone else does, but with a little different. And says that, AEW obviously looks different and it feels different because of the mixture of veterans like Jericho and Moxley and Cody and those guys, and the newer talent that they have. And he likened it to some degree to ECW, where he says, well, if you watch ECW, the wrestlers couldn't work, but, they put on an entertaining show. And basically that's what he was saying is basically, and a lot of people have said that essentially AEW is just simply more entertaining, which is fair. That's a matter of opinion. That's fair. And to sort of back up his ECW guys couldn't work, his idea was that he thought Mike Awesome was great. He thought Mike Awesome could really work until he got into the ring with him. And then he says, oh, this is all just Paul Heyman magic. That Paul Heyman made this guy look like he can really work when he couldn't. Very interesting. So where do I weigh in on this? I think we're talking about work rate here. Now, before we get too deep into it, I did see a lot of people, essentially, the moment you start talking about AEW and NXT, the first thing they go to, of course, is TV ratings. And here's my response to that argument. I spent most of my adult life now, about 20 some odd years, hearing how WWE is the most awful wrestling in the entire world, despite the fact that it was getting high ratings and that the company makes more money than any wrestling company ever. So having high ratings and doubling the ratings of AEW most of the time. And for some odd reason, that's pish posh, that's swept under the rug. They talk about match quality. Well, it's just far better matches in AEW or New Japan or whatever. But when it comes to this subject, it is, well, AEW gets higher ratings, therefore it must be better. It's like, no, you can't have it both ways. NXT has some glaring problems that AEW doesn't have either. So we can say that on both ways. But NXT has made WWE has sabotaged NXT a lot. Mainly in the argument of whether it's a third brand or not. Adam Cole recently said, oh, well, WWE is the third brand of WWE. It's like, well, if that was the case, how can they keep snatching people? How can they take Rhea Ripley? Like, Raw doesn't just go and start taking SmackDown guys. They have a draft. NXT wasn't part of the draft. NXT is not talking about the Royal Rumble. Like, they're not even talking about putting people in the Royal Rumble. What is NXT going to be at WrestleMania? Probably not. So I don't know. They may have a representation. They may have like a title match or something there. But the idea of NXT being a legitimate third brand is kind of It's kind of if we want to be honest. I don't care to debate that subject again. But what I do want to debate is the subject of which show seems to have better work rate. Now, I made a comment a long time ago about Kenny Omega and Phoenix, who had this match, and it's essentially a car crash match where they just did everything to each other. There was no emotion, there was no drama, there was no story. There was no stakes either, because there was no belief that Phoenix actually win. It was basically that Phoenix gets to go in there and do do everything he wants to do. This is the match where he did the moonsault into a German suplex or whatever the hell he did. And I said, this is for people who watch matches and gifts. Just like, Ricochet and Will Ospreay. Some people just watch wrestling matches and gifs. And what I mean by that is they see a gif of a guy doing an amazing move and they think, oh my God, this guy must be a great wrestler. And they don't actually watch his matches. Phoenix is okay, but Phoenix fucks up a lot. Phoenix got taken out of that tournament because Phoenix botched and injured Phoenix, right? And that's not the first time it has happened. Phoenix has hurt himself 2 or 3 times in AEW and gave himself concussions and various things like that. Of course, the entire women's division in AEW have hurt themselves at some point or another. Now, NXT is not much better because you have guys who are getting a little overzealous, like when, Kyle O'Reilly broke Finn Balor's jaw and Candice LeRae breaking her arm and, Ridge Holland, busting up his legs. So it's on both sides. But when you look at AEW and you see that Sonny Kiss is dropping before Kenny Omega is anywhere near his face when it comes to the V-trigger, that's something that we used to get LOL TNA about, right? And ask anybody who's been around for a long time. They remember the LOL TNA memes, where basically TNA was just guys going in there and half-assing it. And that's pretty much what you see to some degree in AEW. You see Jon Moxley not putting any effort into any of his strikes, but it's a lot of the false Lucha Libre stuff, and a lot of it looks very choreographed. And people will say, well, WWE looks overproduced. When I say, well, maybe that's true. Maybe it is overproduced. I don't even know what that really means. But how can it be more produced than a Young Bucks match, where these guys are literally setting up a move in front of you, using other people, where one guy is holding another guy so he can do a flip off of him onto somebody else. It's like, come on, that's absolutely ridiculous. Why doesn't that count as being overproduced? Now, you can say a lot about both shows. Both shows are essentially, sloppy shops as far as the injuries and stuff that is concerned. Both of them come across as big budget indies. The difference is that AEW likely spends far more money than NXT does, especially when you talk about Jericho and Moxley and a lot of those guys. They probably spend a lot of money on. NXT likely doesn't spend that much money on roster, and because most of the people are going to Raw or SmackDown at some point, and will their budget is likely a lot less. And then also when you have NXT has a problem with the sameness, where it just looks the same every week. And that is a problem. And what I mean by that is they don't change things up. It's very dark in the NXT arenas. They don't turn on any lights. There's not enough fans. They're trying to be super safe and all that kind of shit too. So there's a lot to talk about when it comes to both shows. And I'm really kind of grinding on the argument that, we have to compare these two shows based off of TV ratings. Like, that's the silliest thing in the world. I was told, again, for 20 years, just because you have good ratings doesn't mean you have good quality. And AEW does not have a good quality. They do have a loyal fan base, an almost cult-like fan base, due primarily to the fact that it's anti-WWE. And that's pretty much what it... And again, this isn't the first time we've seen this. Every generation has this. It was ECW in the 90s, it was TNA in the 2000s, and it's AEW now. It's whatever is against the norm, people will tend to like. And WWE being a monopoly in this point, not a legitimate monopoly, just in a colloquial sense of a monopoly. And being pretty much the only wrestling show on TV for so long, it created a problem where either you watched WWE or you didn't watch TV for wrestling. And now people have another option, so they're kind of trying to really hold on to that option. And that's fine. But it's also bullshit, because just because something is different doesn't mean that it's good. And just because something is different doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're doing anything different. AEW does a lot of WWE style stuff, but it doesn't have a lot of the baggage that comes with WWE. And a lot of people are not willing to attack them. They're trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. They're also doing a lot of projecting. I saw when it comes to like Sting and Darby Allin, their relationship, or whatever the case may be, a normal person would be like, okay, what is the relationship between these two people? While you have wrestling journalists talking about how it's so emotional that they hang out together. It's like, what is emotional about two people who we don't know each other, just hanging out? And it's like, it's not like Sting told him like, hey, I'm going to be your mentor, and that's what it's going to be. It's just, oh, they're hanging out from time to time. It's implied that they're going to be in some sort of Sting is going to be in his corner or something like that. It's never actually been said. And then only on one occasion, well, he saved them on a couple of occasions, but Sting saves pretty much, he could save anybody, you know? So it's just a weird situation where you have a lot of people projecting, and they really want to create a bubble of AEW is so very good, so very, 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 very good. Phoenix and Omega is 5 stars, and everything else is just, you know, the best wrestling show on TV. But, you know, everybody's going to look at this thing differently. I tend more to, I'm not saying that I agree with either one of them very well, because Tony Khan and AEW don't do a good job of covering up the glaring problems in AEW, not nearly as much as Paul Heyman was able to cover up the glaring issues with ECW. Not nearly. You know, AEW's problems are on front and center. People are choosing to ignore the problem. Okay? And when Booker T meant like people who can't work in ECW, I'm pretty sure he didn't mean Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit. He probably meant like Balls Mahoney and those kinds of guys who are the bulk of the ECW roster. Because I know somebody's going to be in the comment section like, Rey Mysterio was in ECW. It's like, come on, bro. He's obviously not talking about Rey Mysterio. But that's like, I'm sure when Bubba Ray Dudley was talking about the indie-rific nature of AEW, he wasn't talking about Chris Jericho. You know, he's likely talking about, you know, the top flights and those kinds of people who wrestle the get your shit in style, where they basically just want to go out there and do everything they know how to do in 10-15 minutes. The matches are way too long. There is no drama. There is no story. There's no reason for it to happen. There's no reason for anything in the match to happen, but it still does happen. It's entirely choreographed, but it's like a big budget action movie. And sometimes people just love big budget action movies. But the question is, how long? It's only been a year. Okay? So I don't understand why people get so amped about it. It's only been a year. If you would ask people if TNA was going to beat WWE in the ratings, they would have said yes. If you'd looked at it in NXT, I mean, not NXT, but TNA, at a certain point in time, there was people who were used to carry TNA signs to WWE shows. When I went to WrestleMania 23, there was people there with TNA signs. That was in 2007, I believe it was. So Kurt Angle had just, you know, really showed up there, and Samoa Joe was there, and AJ Styles was there, and it was great. It was a good show. You know, it had some of the same problems AEW has though, because you had a lot of the flippity-doo dudes who were just going out there flippity-doing it up, and guess what happened? It burnt out. So I have no reason to believe that AEW won't have the same problem. You know, it's the same. I just say, like, if they don't change how they do business, ECW have far more of a clutch on human emotion than AEW does. See, Cody carries the emotional weight of AEW a lot. He can do the emotional angles like he did with his brother, right? Now, a lot of that is also false, because was there any real heat between Cody and Dustin when they started doing it? I don't need a tag team partner. I need my brother. It's like, it's not like you two dudes were feuding for years and now all of a sudden, you know, the feud is over. It's like, so it came across as being real contrived and phony, you know? But that's just me. Somebody who looks at storytelling, who understands that you have to build these stories up, and, you know, that sort of thing really matters. You know, you just can't do something and it's all of a sudden so emotional. It's so gripping. It's like, no, not really, but whatever. You know, sometimes people just like big budget action movies with a little bit of heart. And maybe AEW has that. It has a big budget action movie with a little bit of heart. So, okay, fine. And NXT is a little bit overproduced, but then again, they're also trying to prepare people to go elsewhere, which is, you know, part of the issue with NXT and them wanting to be a third brand Like, you can't be a third brand if you can't hold on to your own stars. And the moment Keith Lee wins the title, they're looking to yank him off the brand, or they're looking to yank Rhea Ripley off the brand almost immediately. You can't really call yourself a third brand when you're doing that. You know, and there's no doubt in my mind that if NXT actually booked itself like a third brand and actually took on some of the characteristics of Raw and SmackDown, it would kill the AEW. You know, but they choose not to because NXT is supposed to be the opposite of Raw and SmackDown. Therefore, it's running a lot differently. It's a work rate show. So it makes sense that somebody will look at the work rate of NXT and say the work rate is better because that is the focus of NXT. The focus is on the matches. So that's just kind of how it is. You know, it doesn't have all the bells and whistles of SmackDown or Raw or even AEW. And that's by design. The NXT brand is designed to be Triple H's project of wanting a sort of territorial promotion and a sort of indie promotion. That's really what he wanted. But AEW is an indie promotion but completely by accident. They're masquerading as the professionals, and then they're going out there and killing each other with doing wild stunts and doing silly shit, you know? So, but that's just me. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel. I thank you guys for all of your time and attention. Use the hashtag 3Count Commentaries if you are really interested in spreading the good word of 3Count Commentaries. I like you guys so much, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out. So I just decided to add this on here, maybe a little hot tag segment. Hot tag segments are, you know, little things that I came across or I thought of after the video ended. And so because I looked at several different wrestling websites when I came up with this video, I noticed something very glaring in two of these examples. One, when I looked at Wrestle Talk says this at the end of the video, or at the end of the article, when they're talking about what Bubba Ray said. They said, quote, "If you want to treat it like a competition, AEW has been winning on the numbers front ever since the start, consistently bettering WWE's developmental show in overall viewers and, more importantly, the 18 to 49 demographic." So then SES Scoops, right? This is what they had to say. "However you feel about Bully Ray's comments about AEW's in-ring product, there's no question that what they're doing is working. AEW regularly draws higher viewership and greater fan interest in NXT. While these are facts, why do they feel the need to run defense for AEW? Good question. Why not just take the criticism and say, well, he's talking about work rate, right? They're talking about ratings. Well, they're doing something right. Look at the ratings. And like I said at the beginning of this video, I guess WWE must be doing things just fine because they're killing both of these shows in the ratings. And I'm talking about Raw. Okay? And Raw is easily one of the worst wrestling shows. Easily. Now, when it comes to tight work rate and all that type of stuff, I suggest people watch Ring of Honor. It's really good. Okay? But if you're talking about something that you can actually find on television, you're not going to get much better than SmackDown. SmackDown is fucking fantastic. And, you know, but I feel like if you're going to be a wrestling journalist or a wrestling website or something like that, you feel like you need to run interference for one company over another, which is why I said these people have an emotional contact with AEW. Why else would you do this? This is completely unnecessary. This is not even reporting. This is just, oh, for the record, whether the work rate sucks or not, it's better than NXT in the ratings. It's like, okay, but this is also a lot of the problem that we get with the NXT AEW stuff is that a lot of it is fueled by the wrestling journalists. You know, they're really keeping the fans at each other's throats. Like the same people watch both shows. It's all about when AEW has a bump in the ratings, it's usually because there's a dip in NXT, and vice versa. When their NXT is up, it's usually because AEW is down. So the idea is it's pretty much the same people watching both shows. You know, when NXT is doing something people aren't interested in, they turn over to AEW. When AEW is not doing something they're not interested in, they're going over to NXT. That's just kind of how it is. But these folks feel like they have to you know, drum up their support and be at each other's throats. And there is no wrestling journalist that I can think of off the top of my head that is pounding the war drum for NXT. None of them. All of them are fully in AEW's camp. So when you look at, especially like Twitter or something like that, you will see Almost all of the wrestling journalists are watching AEW at one time, and they're driving people to watch AEW. So they've got a lot of help. So the idea that, oh, NXT had a head start, it's like, maybe. But look, you have the entire fucking wrestling infrastructure in your back pocket, because Tony Khan is doing scrums so that the wrestling journalists get to ask their mark questions. And then, he's doing all these other things. Whatever, he's talking on the phone to Dave Meltzer. I see that he's doing interviews with Renee Paquette talking about, I'm regularly in touch with Dave Meltzer, who then, of course, because Tony Khan gives him access, is going to start doing things like giving his matches 5 stars and suggesting people should go watch that show, or, telling him yada, 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 and feeding him information and maybe feeding him some gossip and all that sort of stuff. It's completely ridiculous. Wrestling journalists are really fueling this quote unquote the Wednesday night war. It's not even between, like, the people on the shows love each other. Some of them are even boyfriends and girlfriends with people on different shows. They not the problem. Some of the bitter older heads like Jericho and Matt Hardy are feeding into it, but most of the talent isn't. Most of the talent is like, well, I work where I work. If I was working over there, then I would be in that locker room. If I work over here, though, so I'm in this locker room. And Tony Khan kind of digs in every once in a while, which is a mistake, because whatever they're going through right now, they're not going to be able to juice Brody Lee dying and his son's birthday forever. It's going to eventually fall apart. But it's the wrestling journalists that are largely fueling this stuff. And it's fucking disgusting, because it's really going to tear the wrestling fandom apart. And I know, like, I can talk about AEW fans all day and they could shoot some shots at me, but I have no authority, in which I don't have hundreds of thousands of subscribers or followers on Twitter or whatever, in which to bend public opinion towards one show or the other. I can just tell you what I enjoyed and what I didn't enjoy. But we see these people literally are trying to bend public opinion towards one show or another, and it's absolutely disgusting, especially the longer tenured members of the wrestling journalist media like Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez. But it is what it is, and we already know that. So thank you guys again, and I'll talk to you guys.
What could be sweeter than you?